Welcome to this 365 Freedom Strategy session. Today we're breaking down the mechanics of permission to sell and why your hesitation is currently your most expensive overhead.
Yeah, and when we really look across the landscape of the entrepreneurs and, the founders we advise internally here at 365 Freedom.
What consultants do, right?
Exactly, all of them. We are just constantly running into this invisible ceiling. It's incredibly stubborn.
It really is. I mean, people come to us and they are fully convinced they have this massive structural problem.
Right. They think, my lead generation is broken or, my conversion rate is too low.
Or their email sequences aren't optimized. They're always looking for a mechanical fix.
Yeah, but the reality is so much more fundamental than that. What we're really addressing today is the psychological infrastructure of your sales process.
Right. And our mission in this session is to systematically dismantle this core thesis that is honestly probably holding you back right now.
Yeah, we have to tear it down.
Because the thesis is the biggest barrier to selling is rarely a lack of skill.
Right.
And it's not an inadequate strategy either. It's a fundamental, deeply ingrained lack of internal permission.
It's pure mindset. I mean, you can have the most sophisticated marketing funnel in the world, right?
Oh, totally. The sharpest copywriting, the best tracking software.
All of it. But if you haven't explicitly granted yourself the right to actually make the offer, every single piece of that funnel is going to leak.
Exactly. It's a critical distinction. So let's start by completely dismantling this false belief that poor sales are automatically the result of bad strategy.
Yeah, we call this the illusion of tactics.
The illusion of tactics, yes, because the modern business environment is just, it's absolutely obsessed with tactical execution.
Oh, it's relentless. You're bombarded daily, New scripts, new psychological triggers.
Advanced closing techniques, automated outreach sequences.
AI-driven prompts, all that stuff. But trying to deploy these advanced sales tactics while lacking internal permission, it's a completely contradictory effort.
It makes no sense.
It doesn't. It's like flooring the accelerator while you have the emergency brake pulled all the way up.
Right. The engine is screaming, you're burning fuel, but, you aren't moving an inch forward.
Not an inch.
I always think of it as the equivalent of putting this massive carbon fiber racing spoiler on a car with no engine.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Because the tactics, the scripts, the perfectly designed slide decks, the expensive branding.
All flashy stuff.
Yeah, that's all just the spoiler. It looks great, and it creates the appearance of speed.
Right, the illusion of momentum.
Exactly. But the permission, that deep, unshakable internal conviction that you actually have the right to be in the room, that is the actual engine.
Yeah, and you can't optimize a machine that simply refuses to run.
You really can't.
And here's the thing. The prospect feels that missing end immediately.
No, instantly.
When you attempt to, hack your way through a sales process using these advanced tactics, but you lack the underlying permission to be selling in the first place,
Yeah.
it creates this severe incongruence.
Yeah, an energetic mismatch.
Exactly. The human brain, even on a subconscious level, is incredibly adept at detecting incongruence.
So true.
Like, if your words are saying, this is a high-value offer that will solve your million-dollar problem, but your subconscious is screaming, I'm so sorry for taking up your time.
They're going to hear the subconscious.
Every single time. The prospect will always, 100% of the time, trust the subconscious signal.
We refer to this internally as apologizing for existing in the market. Right?
Yes, apologizing for existing.
Let's really unpack what that apology actually looks like, because I see it manifest constantly, and it's almost never a literal, I'm sorry.
No, it's way more subtle than that.
It shows up in these micro behaviors. Like, it's the outreach email that starts with, I'm just reaching out to...
Oh, the word just.
Right. I just wanted to quickly check if that word just is the ultimate apology.
It completely minimizes your presence.
Yeah. And it's also the way, your voice goes up an octave at the exact moment you skate your price.
Right, turning a definitive statement into a nervous question.
No,
it's $5,000.
Exactly. Or it's burying the actual call to action at the very bottom of a massive wall of text.
Hoping the prospect just magically finds it.
Right, so you don't have to directly point to it. You're subconsciously apologizing for taking up space in their inbox or on their calendar or, in their budget.
Yeah, and not only do they feel that incongruence, but they actually lose trust in you as an authority.
Which is devastating for a sale.
It is. When you're apologizing for existing, no script or strategy will cover up that hesitation. The prospect reads that hesitation as a lack of belief in the product itself.
Right. They don't sit there and rationalize it. They don't think, oh, this person is just shy about selling, but I'm sure their software is amazing.
Exactly. They think, this person doesn't actually believe their solution works.
Yeah.
If they don't believe in it enough to offer it confidently, why on earth would I buy it?
Your internal hesitation instantly translates into their external objection.
Yes. They aren't objecting to the price, they're objecting to your lack of conviction.
Okay, I hear that, but I'm going to push back on this a bit.
Sure.
Because, look, we are internal strategists here at 365 Freedom, right? And we do teach strategy.
We do.
We teach skill. We run training on objections and frameworks. So surely a confident person with a terrible offer or zero skill is still going to fail.
Well, of course.
So at what point do the mechanics actually matter? How can an internal sense of permission completely override a legitimate lack of technique?
Right.
Like if a founder is genuinely terrible at articulating their value proposition, does permission really fix a structurally broken pitch?
That is the exact friction point we need to navigate. It's not that skill doesn't matter, right? It's about the order of operations.
Okay, explain that.
Without permission, even the most finely tuned skills feel forced, manipulative, and completely misaligned.
They feel slick.
Exactly. Skill without permission creates a slick, slimy feeling. Because the seller is trying to force an outcome they don't actually feel they have the right to facilitate. Ah, I see.
They're using like Jedi mind tricks to mask their insecurity.
Right.
Conversely, permission without elite skill still results in a genuine, honest conversation.
So you're saying raw conviction basically covers a multitude of tactical sins.
Absolutely it does. Think about a clumsy but deeply convicted offer.
Okay.
The founder might stumble over their words. They might not use the perfect transition sentence. They might even forget to ask a classic qualifying question.
Right. They break all the rules of a perfect sales call.
Yeah. But if they look the prospect in the eye and say, I know exactly how to fix this problem for you and here's what it costs,
That conviction lands.
it lands.
Mm.
That clumsy offer will outperform a perfectly scripted, highly polished presentation delivered by someone who internally feels like an imposter.
Because the prospect feels the truth of the conviction.
Precisely. Permission is a prerequisite for the strategy to actually function as intended. Your strategy is a multiplier.
Right.
But if your permission is at 0, 1,000 times 0 is still 0. Wow, okay. That makes the order of operations incredibly clear. The conviction has to precede the technique.
Always.
Okay, so if waiting for that alignment is the foundation, let's look at how this breaks down in practice. Because we have a micro story from one of the founders we've studied that perfectly illustrates this psychological trap.
Yeah, this is a great example.
This was someone who possessed an incredibly powerful, transformative offer, right?
Yeah.
But they were completely paralyzed by their own mindset.
Yeah, let's walk through the psychology of that specific founder.
Let's do it.
Here we have a brilliant professional who rarely, if ever, talked about their offer publicly.
Which makes no sense structurally.
Right, and when we directly asked why they were actively withholding this solution from the market, they paused and admitted they didn't want to bother people.
Use the exact word, right? Bother.
Yes. They viewed the act of offering their service as a nuisance. To them, a sales conversation was an uninvited disruption of the prospect's day.
But the paradox here is just fascinating to me. When we asked this exact same founder if their work actually helped people, the answer was immediate.
Oh, completely. It was an unequivocal, definitive yes.
Right. They had absolute, unshakable certainty in the efficacy of their service. They knew their clients got results.
They had the data to prove it.
So psychologically, how does a professional hold two completely opposing beliefs at the exact same time?
It's wild.
Right. How do you maintain utter confidence in the value of your service, combined with the absolute fear that offering it is an annoyance?
It's a profound disconnect. And it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of the transaction itself.
Okay, unpack that.
The founder is experiencing massive cognitive dissonance. On one side of the brain, the logical experiential side, they know their work transforms businesses.
Right. They know the value is real. They have the case studies.
Exactly. But on the other side of the brain, the social conditioning side, they've categorized selling as an inherently selfish act. They believe that the moment they ask for compensation, the entire dynamic shifts from helping to taking.
That's a huge shift.
It is. They believe they're extracting value from the prospect rather than exchanging it.
Because if you view selling as taking, then of course you view it as an interruption. You're interrupting their day to take their money.
Precisely. And because they believed selling was an interruption, they felt it was socially rude to initiate it.
Right.
Therefore, the only polite, acceptable way to sell is to wait for the prospect to somehow magically signal that they're ready to be interrupted.
They were just sitting there.
Sitting there, holding on to this incredible solution, waiting for permission to basically fall from the sky. They were waiting for an external signal.
And that waiting period is exactly where businesses starve to death.
Yep, they starve.
This founder's wait for an external signal brings us to a much broader, incredibly dangerous habit we see across the entire market.
It's an epidemic.
It really is. It's the habit of waiting for outside validation before taking any market action. We really need to spend some serious time breaking down the specific false signals people wait for.
We do, because these are the invisible traps holding your revenue hostage right now.
Absolutely. So let's look at the first one. Waiting for permission from the audience.
Yeah, this is perhaps the most common delusion in the modern creator and founder economy. It's the inbound myth.
The inbound myth. Let's talk about that fantasy.
The fantasy is that if you just post enough free content, if you publish enough white papers, or if you just quietly exist in the marketplace long enough being a good person.
Right? Just putting good vibes out there.
Exactly. The fantasy is that the market will proactively invite you to pitch them.
You're waiting for the audience to basically raise their hand and say, please, you've given us so much value. Won't you please tell us what you have for sale?
Yes. It's hope marketing.
Hope marketing, yeah. You're relying entirely on the prospect to connect the dots. But that rarely, if ever, actually happens.
It doesn't happen because the audience is busy.
Right.
They're utterly consumed with their own fires, their own deadlines, their own lives. They're not managing your sales pipeline for you.
No, they definitely aren't.
If you don't explicitly make an offer, they assume you either have nothing to sell or you're already at capacity.
That's a great point.
By waiting for the audience to give you the green light, you're projecting your own passivity onto the market. You're asking the market to lead when your job as the expert is to lead the market.
That perfectly sets up the second false signal, which is waiting for permission from confidence.
Oh, this one is huge.
It's this deeply flawed idea that you must feel 100% confident, just utterly fearless, before you take action.
Right. You tell yourself, once I work through my imposter syndrome, once I feel truly ready, then I'll start making aggressive offers.
But that completely misunderstands how confidence is actually built.
Right. Because confidence isn't a prerequisite for action.
Yeah.
Confidence is a byproduct of action. You don't generate confidence in a vacuum.
Right. You don't just sit in a dark room meditating until you suddenly feel like a master salesperson.
Exactly. You generate it by entering the arena, making the offer, experiencing the rejection, realizing that the rejection didn't kill you.
Which is a big realization.
It is. And then eventually getting the yes. Courage comes first. Action comes second. Confidence is the distant third.
That's powerful.
If you wait for the feeling of confidence to arrive before you act, you'll be waiting on the sidelines for the rest of your career.
It's literally like waiting to be in shape before you go to the gym.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
The action is the very thing that creates the state you're waiting for.
Exactly.
Which leads to the third false signal. And honestly, I think this one traps some of the most talented people we see.
What's that?
Waiting for permission from bigger results.
Oh, yeah. The catch-22.
Right. It's the ultimate catch-22 of the professional world.
Yeah.
You tell yourself you can't sell aggressively or, you can't raise your prices until you have massive industry-defining case studies.
You convince yourself you need a bigger portfolio to feel worthy of making the offer.
Right. But how do you get those bigger results?
You have to sell your service to high-level clients so you can actually get in the trenches and deliver the work.
Exactly. You're denying yourself the very mechanism required to generate the validation you're waiting for.
It's madness. You say, I'll pitch enterprise clients once I have an enterprise case study. But you'll never get an enterprise case study without pitching an enterprise client without one.
It's a self-imposed exile. You're creating an impossible standard that ensures you never actually have to face the discomfort of the pitch.
It's a brilliant subconscious defense mechanism, really.
It really is. If the rules of the game require you to have something you don't have, you never have to play, which means you never have to lose.
Yep.
And finally, we have the fourth false signal, waiting to be asked directly.
Yeah, this one is similar to the audience permission trap, but it's way more intimate.
Right. It's the passive trap of getting on a discovery call, giving away a ton of free consulting, and then just hoping the prospect will ask, so how can I pay you for this?
It's a complete abdication of your responsibility as a professional.
Right.
When you wait to be asked directly, you're forcing the prospect to do all the heavy lifting of the sales process.
And they don't know how to do that.
Exactly. The prospect doesn't know your pricing structure. They don't know your onboarding timeline. They don't know the parameters of your engagement.
Right.
By refusing to proactively make the offer, you aren't being polite. You're actually being incredibly unhelpful.
You're leaving them stranded.
You're leaving them stranded at the end of a conversation with absolutely no clear next step.
You know, all four of these false signals, the audience, the confidence, the results, the direct ask, they are all rooted in a single overarching fallacy.
Right.
We call it the earning myth. It's this deeply ingrained, completely false idea that selling is a privilege you have to somehow earn the right to do.
Right. You think you have to earn it through tenure in your industry, or through suffering,
Or through giving away endless amounts of free value.
or through acquiring more certifications.
Yes, the certification trap.
We need to aggressively dismantle that idea right now. Selling is not a privilege you earn. It isn't a reward for good behavior.
No.
If your offer genuinely helps people solve a problem, speaking about it is immediately honest and entirely necessary. Period.
Think about it medically. If you're a doctor and you see a patient with a broken arm, you don't wait until you've earned the right to offer them a cast.
Exactly.
You offer the cast because it's the solution to their pain. The offer is inherent to the profession.
It's not a privilege. It's a professional obligation.
If you hold the solution to a problem, withholding that solution because you feel you haven't earned the right to speak isn't humility.
Not at all.
It's actually a disservice to the market. Okay, so if waiting for external signals is a massive trap, and we know that treating sales like an interruption creates crippling anxiety, what's the alternative?
All right, we need a new framework.
How do we actually execute this practically? Because look, we still have to make sales. We still have to drive revenue.
Absolutely.
This brings us to the core strategic reframe of this entire session. Let's break down the mechanics of the invitation frame.
The invitation frame is the absolute antidote to the interruption mindset.
Okay, let's lay it out.
The fundamental shift is this. Selling is not an interruption. It's an invitation.
It's an invitation.
That specific shift in framing, from interruption to invitation, is the entire fulcrum of the strategy. It changes the geometry of the conversation entirely.
Let's really explore why this specific shift in language is the only way to genuinely remove tension from a sales environment. Because words matter here.
They do. An interruption is inherently hostile, right?
Yeah.
An interruption demands attention without consent. It takes value from the person being interrupted. It steals their time, their focus, their peace of mind.
Think about a pop-up ad that covers the article you're trying to read.
Exactly. That's a pure interruption.
And when you believe your pitch is a pop-up ad, your body language, your tone, and your pacing are all going to reflect the guilt of being a nuisance.
But an invitation operates on a completely different psychological wavelength.
Right.
An invitation offers value. An invitation provides clarity, but crucially, it does so without pressure.
Without pressure, that's the key.
Think about the mechanics of an actual invitation in the real world. If I invite you to an exclusive dinner party, I'm presenting you with an opportunity for a great experience.
Right.
I'm not forcing you to attend. I'm extending an offer. The most critical element of an invitation is that it fundamentally respects the autonomy of the person receiving it.
Because it can be declined cleanly?
Exactly. It can be declined cleanly. And because you know it can be declined cleanly, it completely removes your fear of being annoying.
Let's expand on this with a really tangible analogy, because I think this makes it crystal clear.
Yeah.
Think about the difference between telemarketing someone during their family dinner,
The worst.
right, and standing in a massive downpour, offering an umbrella to someone who is getting absolutely soaked.
Okay, yes.
The telemarketer is the ultimate interruption. They're forcing their agenda into a space where it's not wanted or needed.
They're basically trying to trap the person on the line.
Exactly. But the umbrella is an invitation to stay dry.
Yes.
Let's live inside that metaphor for a minute. When you're standing in the rain holding that extra umbrella and you see someone getting drenched, do you agonize over whether to offer it?
Of course not.
Do you worry about bothering them?
No, you don't. You don't hesitate at all. You don't apologize for holding the umbrella.
Right. You don't walk up and say, I'm so sorry to bother you, and I know you're busy walking, but I just wanted to quickly see if maybe you might want this umbrella.
You'd sound ridiculous. You just present it. Hey, I have an extra umbrella. Do you want it?
Okay, but what if they say no? What if they literally swat the umbrella away?
That's the beauty of the invitation frame. If they say no, you don't take it personally. You don't spiral into an existential crisis about whether your umbrella is good enough. You don't assume you're a terrible person for offering.
You simply realize, oh, they don't mind getting wet. Maybe they enjoy the rain.
Exactly. Or maybe they're only walking to a car that's 5 feet away. Their rejection of the umbrella is about their current situation, not about your value.
Right.
The presentation of the umbrella is an act of service, regardless of whether they accept it.
This moves the dynamic entirely from pressure to clarity. You aren't trying to convince them they're wet. They already know they're wet.
Yes.
You're just providing the clarity that a specific solution exists. When you operate from the invitation frame, you're no longer trying to manipulate, coerce, or, handle objections using conversational jujitsu.
You're simply mapping the terrain for them.
Right. You're here in the rain. I'm here with an umbrella. It costs this much to stand under it. You're invited to join.
Yeah.
That's the clarity we're talking about.
And once you internalize that your only job is to provide clarity via an invitation, the physical and conversational return on investment is immediate.
Oh, it's instant.
This is where the theory turns into tangible execution. Let's look at what actually happens in the room or on the Zoom call when you adopt the invitation frame.
Yeah, how does the physiology of the interaction actually change?
Well, we see a very specific physiological transformation. Once founders allow themselves to view their offer as an invitation, the physical tension in their body literally disappears.
Conversations become significantly calmer.
They feel lighter. And this isn't just metaphorical fluff, it's physiological.
Right.
When you remove the pressure of the interruption, your nervous system actually downregulates.
Let's explain how that downregulation works. When you're operating under the belief that you're interrupting someone to take their money, your body treats the sales call like a literal threat.
Right, you enter a state of fight or flight.
You're waiting for the attack, the rejection, the objection, the anger from the prospect. And when your nervous system is in fight or flight, your behavior becomes incredibly forced.
You talk way too fast.
Right, trying to rush through the pitch before they can cut you off.
Your pitch gets higher.
You over-explain every minor feature because you're desperately trying to justify your existence on the call.
You defensively explain your pricing before they even ask about it.
Oh, I've seen that so many times. And you fill every second of silence with nervous chatter because silence feels like impending rejection. That's what a forced conversation looks like.
But when you're aligned, when you're operating purely from the invitation frame, your entire physiological state shifts.
Your tone drops into a more resonant register.
Your pacing slows down.
But most importantly, you become deeply comfortable with silence.
Yes. Silence is the ultimate indicator of permission.
Why is that?
When you issue an invitation, you have to allow the prospect the space to process it. You make the offer, state the price, and then you just stop talking.
You're fully present with them.
Because you're no longer internally managing your own guilt. You aren't scanning their face for signs of annoyance. You aren't preemptively apologizing.
The energy in the room fundamentally shifts from a combative, zero-sum negotiation into a collaborative evaluation.
You're sitting on the same side of the table, basically looking at the umbrella together.
In that collaborative space, the fear of being annoying simply evaporates.
Yeah.
It fades because your fundamental intention has shifted.
Right.
When your intention is purely to extract money to meet a quota, you naturally fear being perceived as greedy or annoying because on some level you are being greedy.
Yeah, that's true.
But when your intention shifts genuinely to service, when you're simply extending an invitation to a solution you know works, there's nothing to fear.
You can't be afraid of offering help.
Exactly. The fear is entirely incompatible with the intention of service.
So we clearly see the immense ROI of operating with permission. We know it transforms the conversational dynamics, the tone, the pacing, and ultimately the close rate.
But we have to address the root mechanic here.
We do. We know the permission doesn't come from the audience.
Right.
And it doesn't come from waiting. So where exactly does this permission come from? We need to lock in the mechanics of this internal decision-making process.
Well, it comes from a single internal source.
Right.
It's an active executive choice.
Yeah.
Permission comes from deciding, consciously and deliberately, that your offer deserves to be shared and seen.
It's a conscious decision you make about the value of your work rather than an emotion you wait to feel.
Okay, I'm going to challenge this heavily.
All right, go for it.
Because saying it comes from a decision sounds incredibly trite.
It does sound a bit simple.
It sounds like a cheap bumper sticker or, a bad motivational seminar. Just decide to have permission.
Right.
If someone has been paralyzed by the fear of bothering people for 5 years, how do they actually flip that switch internally? You can't just will yourself into a new psychological state through sheer force.
No, you can't.
You can't just look in the mirror and shout, "I have permission."
You're absolutely right. And we don't advocate for empty affirmations. You can't trick your brain into permission.
Okay, so what's the actual mechanism?
You flip the switch by anchoring your decision in objective reality. You anchor it in evidence.
Evidence. Okay.
The logic is this. You explicitly tie your offer to the factual reality that it helps people. The decision to grant yourself permission isn't based on ego.
It's not about hype.
No, it isn't based on arrogance or unwarranted self-belief. It's based entirely on the empirical reality of the service you provide.
So it's an evidence-based decision. You're essentially building a legal case for your own right to sell.
Precisely. You look at your track record, you look at the results your service provides.
Yeah.
If you can look at the data, look at past clients, or even look at the structural integrity of your product and objectively say, yes, this work helps solve a specific pinpoint, then the decision to share it becomes a logical requirement.
It's in alignment with truth.
Yes. You aren't deciding to be a ruthless, aggressive closer. You're simply deciding to stop hiding a valuable asset from the people who are actively suffering without it.
Wow.
You're deciding to let your external actions match your internal conviction.
And taking that action requires trusting the audience, doesn't it?
Heavily.
It requires relinquishing the desperate need to control their reaction. If you offer the invitation, you have to trust that the right people will appreciate it.
You have to let go of the need for universal approval.
Exactly. You don't need everyone's permission. You don't need everyone to like the offer or even to like you.
No.
You just need the willingness to invite the right people and trust that they have the intelligence to recognize the value of the umbrella when they're standing in the rain.
When you finally start waiting for the market to validate your right to speak, you assume the authority of your expertise.
You step into it.
You stop being a passive participant hoping the market will pull you along, and you become the active issuer of invitations.
Yeah.
The hesitation, which is costing you massive amounts of revenue and draining your mental energy, is replaced by clarity, service, and real forward momentum.
Which brings us to the final reflection you need to process today. I want you to notice the exact moments this week where you hesitate to mention your offer.
Just observe it.
Right? Pay attention to that microsecond on a Zoom call. Or while you're drafting an email where you decide to hold back, where you soften your language, add the word just, or avoid the pitch entirely.
Right.
In that exact moment of hesitation, ask yourself, what if the exact people you are trying so hard not to bother are actually the ones desperately waiting for your invitation?
Exactly.
If you're ready to stop waiting for permission and start issuing invitations, visit 365 Freedom online to join the community. This has been a 365 Freedom Strategy session.